A story that 2,000 years later is still being retold from its many perspectives. What are we to take when for many of us it feels as if the world is on fire and in some places it is literally ablaze? Are we to take the story as so many years of sweet songs and a peaceful babe? No, some of us say, not this year. And we hear the echo of our spiritual ancestors at our shoulder. No, not this year, they say. And our children plead for stories with meaning. Surrender in strength and resistance that brings peace. Take this story, the ancestors say. Shepherds near to Bethlehem, who were likely the special shepherds, looking over the flock of lambs that would be sacrificed in the temple. Now, these shepherds were trained in religious instruction as well as in livestock. Angels appear and tell these shepherds to go to Bethlehem, to leave their flock, the one thing they've spent their entire life training to do. And they leave them. And they go following, wait for it, a star. Take the kings, the magi, who are gathered from diverse kingdoms, we are told, Persia and India and Africa, who defy one of the most powerful and vicious rulers, Herod. Herod, who tells them to find the baby and bring him back. He feigns compassion, but the magi, at great personal risk, do not return to Herod. Instead, they go home another route and conceal the identity of the baby. Take the innkeeper, who would, within all reason, be right to say, as so many others had before him, I have no room. Who would be right to not even feel a twinge of conscience by shutting the door, but who instead swings wide open the barn door for this bursting girl and her unlikely husband-to-be. Take the angel who departed paradise to bring news that even terrified him. Take the man Joseph, who could easily have told Mary, you are on your own. A statement that would have meant death by stoning or starvation at the city limits. But who instead said yes? Take Mary, of course. What it meant for her to risk her life, her family, her future to bring this baby into the world. Again and again, the ancestors plead, take this story. Surrender and resistance and unlikely human characters. A story of a baby to what he himself will have to surrender in this story, and to the most shining story of nonviolent resistance that the world has yet to tell. And so, beloved, this is where we find ourselves now. The Christmas story that can feel distant, routine, meaningless. But if we take it, powerful, beautiful, terrifying. May Sarton said it well in 1974. In the year of the darkness, in the year of the words, the millions of words, accusing, excusing, breaking, demanding, lying, refusing, in the year of the desert, in the year of the bombs, when hatred pollutes the air, what we long for is silence. And so must we go to Bethlehem, make the hard journey again, dying of thirst as we are? Must we go to the place of hatred and war without end? Must it all be done again from the beginning after 2,000 years? I've been filled with Bethlehem this year, taken by it. The images of the indoor slamming and the shout and the raucous laughter in the heated tavern while Mary shivers in the barn feels ever near as politicians once more pass laws skillfully, as skillful as the moral absolution of a full inn, skillfully take homes from the working poor. I've been filled with Bethlehem, taken by it as the images of a poor family in Roman-occupied territory, struggling to find warmth and care as they bring their child into the world, feels all the more close as 2 million children in our country, right this night, face the loss of their insurance because Congress has not renewed the Children's Health Insurance Program. I'm being dragged to Bethlehem, kicking and screaming, captured by it as images of a family on the cusp of birth who must hide their son from a bloodthirsty king. As just Friday, the White House announces their consideration of a policy that will separate immigrant children from their families during deportation as a mechanism to discourage immigration. And I know some of you are saying, because I said it just a moment ago, for all that is good, let's stop politicizing this story. But then this is the story.
Amen.
It is a story that is a code which has been used again and again for the surrender to the spirit of revolutionary love. A code used by Jews occupied under Roman rule in the early Christian communities, resisting again, by slaves in the colonies and in the United States, by the confessing church under Nazi rule and Dorothy Sole, by Gustavo Gutierrez in Peru and Oscar Romero in El Salvador, by Dr. King and Ella Baker in the civil rights movement. My colleague, Reverend Cecilia Kingman, reminded me recently that our spiritual cousins, the Unitarians in Transylvania, Romania, also used this story as code. Considered a double minority as being ethnically Hungarian and religiously Unitarian, they received brutal treatment in the 1970s and 1980s under the dictator Nicolae Ceausescu. And they survived in part by keeping their faith alive. And they used this story, the story of Jesus' birth and life, as code to share truths and ideas that could not be spoken aloud. So Sarton concludes, after asking, must we go to Bethlehem? Yes. Sick at heart, plagued, lost as we are, let us make the hard journey. Perhaps if we go there, it will happen again. It will happen to us. An infant will be born again out of blood and on filthy straw. How naked, how vulnerable. How desperately in need this breath between past and future. Infant hope. On October 9th, Clark Howe, 12 years old, was scared. His dad woke him up in the middle of the night and told him that they had to grab what few things they could and go, because the fires were simply too close. When his family was finally able to return to their home, Clark says that their entire home in Santa Rosa and their entire community had been destroyed by the fires. They stood there with their neighbors, just taking stock of the devastation. And then they all noticed a crab apple tree standing in the Howe's front yard. It was the only tree for miles and miles, with homes that had been burnt to ash, and this tree stood. And so Clark's parents and their neighbors went back to the shelter where they were staying, and they found a few Christmas ornaments. And they returned to the crab apple tree. And in this gray, ash-filled landscape, they put a few baubles on the branches that remained. Clark said, standing in the ash, looking at that tree, "We are really not struggling anymore. We're looking forward to some good holidays." And the 12-year-old speaks a prophecy of hope that eludes many of us much more experienced in years. By this spiritual legacy, like the shepherds of old, we are called back to Bethlehem. We are called to remember that some can resist in extraordinary ways, traveling roads of hazard to save hope and humanity. Others can surrender in strength to the life unfolding, raise a child that they did not plan on raising, and protect a woman who will amaze the angels. Some will surrender to the urging late at night that they must go to Bethlehem, and others will find beauty in revolution, peace in resistance, and strength in surrender. And yet others, when all seems lost, will take ornaments and take back what is good, take story that survives, take surrender, take resistance, take revolution, first within. I close with the words of Dorothee Sohle, the German liberation theologian. In this night, the stars left their habitual places and kindled wildfire tidings that spread faster than sound. In this night, the shepherds left their posts to shout the new slogans into each other's clogged ears. In this night, the foxes left their burrows, and the lion spoke with deliberation. This is the end revolution. In this night, roses fooled the earth and began to bloom in snow.
Joy like hope.